The war was over. For the first time in years, Captain Elias Rourke could feel the silence of space as more than just the absence of gunfire. It was quiet enough to hear the hum of his ship, the small vibrations of the engines, and for a moment the sound of his own breathing. The galaxy had been reshaped by conflict, and humanity had emerged victorious, though victory had left scars that went deeper than flesh or metal. Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the stars streaking past the viewport. He had fought in countless battles, survived ambushes, and watched friends die in explosions that lit the darkness like false suns. Yet no amount of survival had prepared him for the emptiness that victory brought. He had dreamed of peace for years, but now that it had arrived, he found it harder than ever to imagine what that meant. A soft chime echoed through the cockpit. Elias frowned, reaching for the console. A message flashed on the screen. Assignment update. Personnel transfer incoming. Elias' brow furrowed. Transfers were normal, yes, but something about the tone of this message made him uneasy. He pressed a button, and the ship's docking bay door opened, revealing a figure standing in the dim light. She was unlike anything he had seen before. The alien stood tall, slender, with skin that shimmered faintly in shades of blue and silver. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and alert, moving with an awareness that suggested she took in everything at once. Her movements were precise, almost too graceful, and her presence carried a quiet authority that made Elias feel small in comparison. "Captain Rourke," a calm, musical voice asked. "Yes," he replied, voice rough from disuse. "I'm Elias Rourke." "You are," he hesitated, unsure how to address someone from a species he had only seen as enemies. "I am Corallan," she said simply. Her gaze did not waver, but Elias could feel her studying him as carefully as he studied her. A brief warning from the military echoed in his mind. "She is highly capable. Do not underestimate her." "Assigned to you," the message continued. "Purpose, rehabilitation, and observation." The docking bay doors closed behind her, and the hum of the ship settled around them. Elias motioned to a chair. "Sit. Let's talk. This isn't optional." Over the next hours, they spoke cautiously. Elias learned that Corallan had been a strategist and scout during the war. Her species, the Lyrathi, had fought with a precision and efficiency that made them formidable opponents. Yet she did not speak of vengeance or hatred. She spoke of survival, of understanding the galaxy, and of the hope that the cycle of violence could end. Elias found himself listening more than speaking. Her perspective was alien, yes, but it was sharp and unclouded by emotion. She had seen the worst of both sides of the war, and somehow she had survived it with a clarity he could not match. When the ship entered normal cruising speed, Elias leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said slowly, "most humans wouldn't trust you." Elias could feel the distance between them, not just species, but experience, perspective, and history. And yet, there was a sense of possibility here, something that stretched beyond war and victory. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. The ship's sensors had picked up an unidentified vessel approaching fast. Elias moved quickly to the console. "Contact." Together they navigated the situation, predicting enemy maneuvers and evading detection. The intruder ship changed course, finally disappearing into the blackness of space, leaving behind only the faint hum of sensors. Elias exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. He glanced at Corallan, whose expression had not changed. "You didn't panic," he said. "I do not panic." "Panic is inefficient," she replied, almost casually. Her composure impressed him, though it also made him aware of how much he had relied on instinct and brute force during the war. She reminded him of what he had forgotten, that intelligence, patience, and observation were just as powerful as firepower. The hours passed slowly after that. Elias introduced Corallan to the ship, its routines and its protocols. She observed quietly, asking questions that revealed not ignorance but a desire to understand fully before acting. Elias realized that in many ways she was teaching him to think, to pause, and to consider perspectives he had dismissed in the heat of battle. By the time the ship reached the outskirts of the human colony on Arcadia Prime, Elias felt a strange sense of camaraderie. Not friendship, not yet, but a recognition that they were, in some way, bound together by circumstance. When they docked, a group of human officials met them. There was polite acknowledgement of Corallan's presence, tempered by caution and suspicion. She ignored the attention, her eyes scanning the surroundings with precise calculation. One of the officials stepped forward. "Captain Rourke, are you prepared to integrate your assigned companion into colony operations? The command will be watching." "Not like this." The first day ended with them standing side by side, watching the colony lights. Elias understood something vital. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders alike, but he was not alone. He had survived the war, and now, for the first time, he had a chance to live for something beyond it, to rebuild, to understand, and perhaps to forge bonds that could outlast even the deepest scars of battle. Corallan's presence was a challenge, yes, but it was also an opportunity. And Elias, weary yet alert, realized he was ready to face it, not just as a soldier, but as a human being capable of growth, understanding, and resilience. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and somewhere out there, the galaxy waited. The war was over, but the journey, the real journey, was only beginning. The days after docking at Arcadia Prime were filled with routine, but Elias felt the weight of expectation pressing on him from every direction. Military command had left instructions: observe Corallan, integrate her into colony operations, and ensure that nothing went wrong. To Elias, it felt less like a mission and more like a test of patience and morality. He had faced countless alien enemies, but working alongside one in peace and treating her as more than property was unfamiliar ground. Corallan adapted quickly. She moved through the colony with quiet efficiency, her senses alert to every detail. She watched humans, studied machinery, and asked questions that revealed her remarkable intellect. She understood more than Elias expected, yet she never flaunted it. Instead, she observed, waited, and learned. It was during a maintenance check on the colony's energy grid that Elias realized just how capable she was. The system had been damaged in the war, and engineers were struggling to stabilize the output. Temperatures fluctuated, circuits overloaded, and the risk of a shutdown was high. Elias leaned over the console, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need to reroute power through the auxiliary systems. If we don't, half the colony goes dark in 10 minutes. That's not how we normally do it." "You did that fast," he said, shaking his head. "You're good." And in Corallan, he had an ally who embodied all three. Over the next week, Elias and Corallan continued their routines, but the colony was not without problems. Rumors of rogue alien factions had begun to surface, small groups refusing to accept the war's outcome. They attacked supply lines, sabotaged infrastructure, and threatened peace. Human intelligence was limited. The factions were small, mobile, and difficult to track. Elias was called to a meeting with the colony council. Corallan accompanied him, though she remained silent, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "The rebels are using guerrilla tactics," one official said. "We've lost 3 supply convoys this month alone. If this continues, rebuilding will stall and civilian casualties could rise." A former enemy offering guidance was not easy for them to accept, yet Elias supported her. "She is right," he said. "We have resources, but we lack the perspective she provides. Let's utilize it." Corallan's input turned out to be invaluable. Within days, they were able to reroute convoys, anticipate attacks, and minimize casualties. The colony began to stabilize in ways it had not since the war ended. Yet trust did not come easily. Some humans whispered, questioning Elia's judgment and Corallan's loyalty. They doubted that a Lyrathi could truly serve human interests, even if her actions suggested otherwise. Elias ignored the gossip, focusing instead on results. Every successful mission, every convoy delivered safely, strengthened their bond, not as master and subordinate, but as partners. It was on one of these missions that Elias truly began to understand Corallan's perspective. A small rebel faction had seized an abandoned outpost on a fringe planet. The Council sent Elias and a small human team to investigate and reclaim it. Corallan insisted on joining, her reasons clear. Her understanding of alien tactics and technology could prevent unnecessary losses. The journey to the outpost was tense. The planet's atmosphere was thin, the landscape rocky and treacherous. Sensors picked up faint movement, shadows shifting among the jagged cliffs. Elia's team tightened their formation, weapons ready. Corallan moved with them silently, observing every ridge, every shadow. "They will not hold their positions long if we approach directly," she said. "Flank from the east ridge. They will be distracted by a false advance from the west." "You're suggesting a diversion." Later, around a makeshift campfire near the outpost, Elias spoke quietly. "You could have left. You're not obligated to help humans." "I wish to see the latter realized." "That is enough for now." She designed systems to recycle water more efficiently, suggested agricultural methods suited to local soil, and even trained humans in defensive tactics learned from her species. Elias observed quietly, learning from her as much as guiding her. One evening, while reviewing maps in the command center, Elias leaned back in his chair. "You're incredible," he said, almost to himself. Corallan did not respond immediately. After a moment she said, "Incredible, perhaps, but my skills are tools. How they are used determines their worth. You, Captain, have shown restraint in their use. That is rarer than skill itself." War had taught him how to fight, but it had not taught him how to lead, to understand, or to cooperate. Corallan was teaching him all of it, in ways subtle and profound. Their growing bond was tested when intelligence reported an unusual energy spike near the colony's outer rim. Elias and Corallan were dispatched to investigate. The anomaly was not natural. Someone, or something, was manipulating energy grids in ways that mirrored Lyrathi technology. As they approached the source, Corallan's posture stiffened. "These are not human methods. This is deliberate mimicry, a signal meant to deceive or lure us. No surprises. They expect this." Corallan moved silently among them, analyzing weaknesses and signaling Elias when it was safe to act. They disabled the system without alerting the rest of the group, preventing a potential disaster. Back on the ship, Elias allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. "You saved the colony today," he said quietly. "Again. You prevented unnecessary risk. We both acted to protect life." Yet with allies like Corallan, he understood that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, nor its technology, but its ability to adapt, to cooperate, and to survive morally in the aftermath of destruction. As the ship cruised back toward Arcadia Prime, Elias watched Corallan reviewing data quietly. He realized that the partnership he had once feared would be awkward or forced had become a source of strength. Together, they were not just surviving, they were building the foundation for a new era. And somewhere deep inside, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, but he would not face them alone. Not with Corallan by his side, not with human ingenuity guiding them, and not with the quiet determination that had carried him through war finally being applied to the work of peace. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Elias welcomed it. The day began with a chill that seeped through the walls of the Arcadia Prime Command Center. Elias rubbed his hands together, trying to shake off the stiffness. Reports had come in overnight. The rogue alien faction was active again, and this time, their operations were closer to the colony than ever before. Supplies had been disrupted, energy grids tampered with, and scouts reported unusual activity in the nearby asteroid belt. Elias glanced at Corallan, who was already seated at a terminal scanning data with a precision that left him in awe. Her fingers moved almost too fast for the human eye to follow, each keystroke producing predictions, simulations, and tactical options. They've expanded their network, she said calmly, eyes never leaving the screen. They are no longer just a ragged group. They are organized, adapting to human protocols and learning quickly. We must be strategic. They would lead a small team into the asteroid belt to locate the rebels' hidden base, gather intelligence, and disable their operation before it escalated. Kuralin insisted that only a lean team could move quickly without being detected. Elias agreed. As they suited up, he noticed the way she moved, alert but controlled, every motion precise. She was not just surviving, she was analyzing, learning, and preparing for every possible outcome. Elias felt both admiration and humility. He had faced countless enemies in the war, yet here was someone who could predict moves before they were even made. The journey to the asteroid belt was tense but silent. Sensors scanned constantly, and Kuralin reviewed every signal, every shift in energy patterns, every shadow among the rocks. Elias marveled at her ability to synthesize information so quickly, making predictions that were often more accurate than his own experience allowed. They found the entrance to the rebel base hidden within a narrow crevice of a massive asteroid. Kuralin studied it carefully. They are expecting an approach from the north, she said. If we take the southern path, we can enter undetected and gather information before they realize we are here. The air was thin, the darkness pressing in, and the only sounds were their controlled breathing and the faint hum of their suits' life support systems. Kuralin led the way, her knowledge of alien systems guiding them around traps and hidden sensors. Finally, they reached the interior of the base. It was small but well defended, with energy shields and automated patrol drones. Elias gestured to Kuralin, "Your move." When the time came to disable the base's communications and power grid, it was nearly effortless under her direction. But the rebels were not so easily outmaneuvered. A small squad returned earlier than expected, and one of them caught sight of movement near a supply cache. Elias froze, but Kuralin acted instantly. "Down," she hissed, pulling him behind a bulkhead as energy weapons fired in their direction. Elias felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, but Kuralin's calm presence grounded him. "Follow my lead," she said. Her hands moved over a console, overriding systems and redirecting power. The drones suddenly turned against the rebels, neutralizing them without harm. Elias blinked. That was brilliant. The information was critical. It would allow the Council to preempt attacks and stabilize the region. As they prepared to leave, Elias noticed the tension in Kuralin's posture. "Something wrong?" he asked. "There is a network we have not detected," she said quietly. "They are moving in shadows, preparing for a counterstrike. We have been observed. Our presence may have alerted them." Alone. Kuralin moved through the northern corridor, triggering alarms deliberately, drawing the attention of patrolling rebels. Elias and his team slipped through the southern route, hearts pounding as alarms echoed behind them. The rebels pursued Kuralin relentlessly, but she anticipated their moves, leading them into traps and dead ends. Elias watched from a safe distance as she used her knowledge of their tactics to manipulate the battlefield, ensuring that no one was harmed unnecessarily. Her strategy was flawless, her courage undeniable. When they reunited outside the asteroid belt, Elias felt a mix of relief and admiration. "You did it," he said. Kuralin tilted her head. "We did it, together." Together. But he also realized that humanity's strength lay not just in its weapons, but in its ability to cooperate, adapt, and learn. Kuralin was a living example of that principle. Over the following days, Elias and Kuralin continued to work closely. He found himself learning from her more than he had expected, adapting his own strategies to include her insights. She had a way of seeing patterns, of anticipating outcomes that no human training could provide. One evening, while reviewing maps of the surrounding sectors, Elias spoke quietly. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you're here. And perhaps understanding." Elias realized that this partnership was more than tactical. It was a bridge between species, a lesson in the power of cooperation and understanding. As the colony lights flickered in the distance, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was dangerous, yes, but with allies like Corallan, humanity could face it with strength, ingenuity, and moral clarity. They had survived war, but now they had the chance to shape peace. And for the first time in a long while, Elias allowed himself to hope. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of unknowns, but together they were ready. Elias and Corallan, human and Lyrathi, stood at the threshold of a new chapter, one where courage, intelligence, and trust would define the future more than weapons ever could. For now, the stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of both the dangers and possibilities that lay ahead. And Elias, once a soldier defined by war, began to understand the real meaning of victory. Not survival, but the power to protect, to learn, and to build something lasting in the aftermath of destruction. The days after the asteroid belt mission were quieter, but Elias' new calm was temporary. The galaxy never stayed still, and neither did its threats. The rogue alien faction had been weakened, yes, but whispers reached Arcadia Prime that other groups were forming alliances, learning from past mistakes, and preparing to strike in ways no one expected. Elias spent long hours in the command center, studying reports, maps, and intelligence logs. Corallan worked beside him, her presence a constant reminder that victory was never just about firepower. Her knowledge of alien strategy, technology, and behavior had already prevented countless disasters, and Elias had come to rely on her insights as much as on his own instincts. Today, a new problem arose. A faction of human officials had begun questioning Corallan's role in the colony. They doubted her loyalty, worried that a former enemy could not truly be trusted. Some even suggested removing her from operations altogether. Elias felt a familiar tension rise in his chest. He had faced pressure like this before, but never regarding an ally whose loyalty had already proven itself in action. He looked at Corallan, who remained calm, her eyes focused on the incoming reports. "They are wrong," Elias said firmly. "She has saved lives, stabilized systems, and prevented attacks. She is an asset, not a liability." He knew that human prejudice and fear could undo everything they had achieved if they let it. And more importantly, he trusted Corallan, not just as a tool of war or a tactical advisor, but as an equal, a partner in the true sense. The council convened later that day. Elias stood at the center of the chamber, Corallan beside him. Officials questioned her, scrutinizing every move, every word. Corallan answered with precision and honesty, demonstrating knowledge of human systems, technology, and culture that few expected from a former enemy. By the end of the session, Elias felt a measure of pride. Corallan had not only proven her competence but had also subtly educated the officials on the value of cooperation, intelligence, and restraint. It was not enough to win battles, they had to win trust. The very next morning, reports came in that a new threat had been identified on a nearby moon. A group of rogue aliens had begun constructing a weapon capable of destabilizing the colony's energy network. The council convened again, and Elias volunteered immediately to investigate. "You will go with Corallan," one official said reluctantly. "We believe her insight will be critical. Let's prepare carefully." As they touched down, the landscape revealed itself. Jagged rocks, deep craters, and structures that were clearly alien in design but partially repurposed with stolen human technology. Corallan scanned the area. "They are efficient but not invincible. We need to disable their energy source first. It will prevent reinforcements." Together, they moved across the rocky terrain, avoiding patrols and scanning for traps. Corallan's knowledge of alien behavior proved invaluable, predicting ambush points and guiding their path with near-perfect accuracy. They reached the energy core, a pulsating structure that radiated power in waves. Elias began planting devices to neutralize it, but a sudden alarm blared, echoing across the moon's surface. They had been detected. Too fast, Elias muttered. They must have anticipated our approach. If we continue calmly, we can complete the mission before reinforcements arrive. Elias exhaled, a rare smile crossing his face. We did it. When they finally reached their ship, the tension broke slightly, replaced by relief. Back at the colony, the council received their report with astonishment. The rogue faction's plans were neutralized before they could cause harm, and the data Corellin had collected allowed engineers to reinforce defenses in anticipation of future attacks. Elias felt a quiet pride. We couldn't have done this alone, he said, glancing at Corellin. She responded simply, no, we acted as necessary. Cooperation was key. Corellin had become more than an ally. She was a teacher, a strategist, and a partner in ways he had never imagined. But peace was fragile. Whispers continued about other factions learning from past failures, using tactics Elias and Corellin had observed. He knew that stability in the galaxy was temporary unless humanity continued to adapt, to learn, and to cooperate with those who shared their goals. Elias walked through the colony late one night, the lights casting long shadows on the streets. Corellin joined him silently. You are thinking too much, she observed. I am thinking about the future, Elias replied. About what we've built and how quickly it could unravel. The next challenge arrived sooner than expected. Reports of an unknown vessel approaching the colony reached the command center. Sensors indicated it was using stealth technology beyond human detection capabilities, and its trajectory suggested it could reach the colony undetected unless intercepted immediately. Elias and Corellin prepared the defenses. They are likely testing us, Corellin said. Observation first, reaction second. Do not underestimate subtlety. When the unknown vessel attempted a surprise approach, their forces were ready. They disabled it with precision, preventing damage and capturing the crew for interrogation. The council praised their efforts, but Elias noticed a shift in attitudes. Officials who had doubted Corellin's loyalty began to recognize the value she brought, not just as a former enemy, but as a partner who could teach humans new ways of thinking, seeing, and reacting. One evening, after another successful operation, Elias and Corellin sat atop a hill overlooking the colony. The wind was cool, carrying the faint scent of alien flora that had been adapted for human use. You've changed things, Elias said quietly, not just in the colony but in how humans see possibility. Together, we have accomplished more than I expected. He had learned that lesson countless times in battle, but now it resonated on a different level. The galaxy was dangerous, but the future was also full of potential if humans were willing to think beyond force, to trust allies, and to act with purpose. As they watched the colony lights flicker below, Elias realized that the real work of the post-war era had only begun. Stabilizing the region, building trust, and preventing the rise of new threats would require courage, intelligence, and vision. But with Corellin by his side, he felt ready. Not just to survive, but to lead, to learn, and to ensure that humanity's victory became a foundation for something lasting. For now, the stars above Arcadia Prime seemed endless, filled with both danger and promise. And Elias, once a soldier defined by war, understood that his role had changed. The galaxy was no longer just a battlefield. It was a canvas, and together with Corellin, he would help shape it. The future was uncertain, full of challenges, but also opportunities. And Elias, human and resilient, knew that with allies like Corellin, the galaxy could become a place where courage, intelligence, and cooperation mattered more than fear, hate, or violence. For the first time in years, he felt a quiet certainty. Humanity had survived the war. Now it was time to thrive. The galaxy had begun to settle into an uneasy calm, but Elias knew better than to trust appearances. Reports of alien activity had slowed, Yet subtle signals suggested that remnants of the rogue factions were consolidating. They had learned from past failures, adapting strategies, and preparing for a decisive strike. Humanity's colonies remained vulnerable, and Arcadia Prime, still recovering from the war, could become a target. Elias reviewed the intelligence with Corallan, who had grown into an indispensable partner. Her analysis was sharp, her predictions often flawless. Together, they mapped potential threats, identified vulnerabilities, and created contingency plans. Every decision carried weight, and every misstep could cost lives. "There is a pattern," Corellan said, her eyes scanning the holographic projection of the sector. "The rogue factions are converging on the outer colonies. Their goal is destabilization, not just destruction. If left unchecked, they could incite panic and weaken human control in this region. Then we intercept them here at Arcadia Prime. If we protect the colony, we set an example that humans are not easy prey, and we prevent further escalation. Without her, many of our lives and systems would have failed. She stays." Defensive grids were reinforced, patrols were increased, and civilians were moved to safe zones. Elias and Corallan coordinated their strategies, blending human ingenuity with alien precision. Every detail was considered: supply lines, energy flow, surveillance systems, and potential rebel tactics. The enemy arrived sooner than expected. Sensors detected multiple ships emerging from the shadows of a nearby nebula, maneuvering with skill and speed. Elia's heart raced, but Corallan remained composed. "They expect a defensive response," she said. "We will give them what they expect, then act differently. Surprise is our advantage." Human ships moved into standard formations, projecting the appearance of a routine defense. Meanwhile, Corallan's tactical commands directed subtle adjustments, positions shifted, energy shields fluctuated, and hidden countermeasures were deployed. As the enemy fired, expecting chaos, they were met with precision. Human ships anticipated their movements, outmaneuvering them at every turn. Corallan's calculations had accounted for even minor variables: speed, trajectory, and energy output. Each strike was countered before it could harm the colony. Elias felt a surge of adrenaline as he piloted his ship through the fray, trusting Corallan's guidance completely. They moved as a single unit, human intuition and alien strategy in perfect harmony. Every decision was calculated, every maneuver intentional. The battle raged for hours. The rogue faction was relentless, but Elias and Corallan's combined efforts gradually turned the tide. Enemy ships were disabled, communication networks jammed, and supply lines cut. The invaders realized that their initial advantage had been neutralized. During a critical moment, one enemy cruiser attempted a daring attack on the colony's central energy hub. Elias and Corallan coordinated a counterstrike. Corallan analyzed the cruiser's power fluctuations, directing Elias to exploit a temporary overload in its shielding. With a precise strike, the cruiser was disabled, crashing harmlessly into the asteroid belt. The remaining enemy vessels, recognizing their disadvantage, attempted a retreat. Elias authorized pursuit, but Corallan advised caution. "They may have traps. Let them leave. Focus on securing the colony first. Strategic patience will serve better than reckless pursuit." Preserving life and maintaining the integrity of the colony was more important than vengeance. He had learned that lesson over and over in the past weeks, and Corallan's counsel had been invaluable. Once the battle ended, the colony was secure. Damage was minimal, and no civilian lives had been lost. Elias and Corallan surveyed the aftermath, noting the efficiency of their response and the resilience of the human forces. The council convened once more, this time with a tone of respect and gratitude. Officials praised Elias and Corallan, acknowledging her crucial role in defending the colony and highlighting the importance of cooperation between species. Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. Victory in battle was not enough. What mattered now was establishing a lasting peace and a foundation for growth. Kurellen had not only saved lives but had taught humans new ways to think, act, and anticipate threats. Her presence was no longer a point of contention, but a symbol of the future they could build together. In the days that followed, Elias and Kurellen worked tirelessly to fortify the colony. Kurellen shared her knowledge of alien technology, helping engineers develop more efficient energy systems, defensive structures, and supply networks. Humans adapted quickly, learning not just the mechanics of the technology, but also the principles behind it: precision, foresight, and efficiency. During a quiet evening, Elias walked with Kurellen through the colony. Civilians were safe, operations running smoothly, and a sense of normalcy was returning. The stars above twinkled with a calm brilliance, a reminder of the vast galaxy beyond. "You've changed the way humans think," Elias said softly. "Not just here, but in every decision, every operation. We see possibilities differently now. I never thought I'd say that about an alien I once fought against." Colonies that once relied solely on human strategy began to incorporate alien perspectives, using intelligence, prediction, and restraint to stabilize regions and prevent future conflicts. Elias and Kurellen's work inspired new protocols, emphasizing collaboration over dominance and foresight over brute force. But the story was not just about strategy or technology. It was about humanity's capacity for growth, for moral choice, and for recognizing value beyond appearances or history. Elias had faced countless enemies in his life, yet none had challenged him to think, to trust, and to act with integrity in the same way Kurellen had. One morning, as they reviewed a newly established communication hub designed to link multiple colonies, Elias spoke quietly. "You know, I used to think victory was just about surviving. Now I understand it's about more than that. It's about building, protecting, and creating something lasting. Then we've done more than survive. We've given humanity a chance to thrive." Elias realized that the galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer just a survivor of war. It was a builder, a thinker, and a force capable of creating peace through intelligence, cooperation, and moral courage. Kurellen had shown him that victory was not just in winning battles, but in shaping the future responsibly. One evening, as the twin suns of Arcadia Prime set over the horizon, Elias and Kurellen stood together, watching the light spill across the colony. The air was calm, filled with the quiet hum of life returning to normal. "You know," Elias said, "I never expected this. Not just surviving the war, but seeing a future where humans and aliens can work together. I think I finally understand what it means to be human." But now, with Kurellen at his side and a thriving colony behind him, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than any battle victory. The galaxy was still vast, full of unknowns, and the possibility of conflict remained. But humanity had proven its resilience. With intelligence, cooperation, and courage, it could face any challenge. And Elias knew that with allies like Kurellen, they could not only survive, but thrive, shape the galaxy, and define their own future. As night fell over Arcadia Prime, the stars shone brightly above. Elias stood tall, Kurellen beside him, and together they looked toward the future. The war was over, but the journey of building peace, understanding, and interstellar cooperation had only just begun. For the first time in years, Elias felt something he had long thought impossible: hope. Humanity had endured. Humanity had adapted. And humanity, guided by courage, intelligence, and moral strength, was ready to face the stars. And at the heart of it all, Elias knew, was partnership, the understanding that survival alone was not enough. To thrive, humans would need allies, wisdom, and the willingness to see the universe not just as a battlefield, but as a place of opportunity, growth, and unity. The future stretched endlessly before them, filled with challenges, but also promise. Elias and Kurellen had proven that together, anything was possible. And as they watched the twin suns set on Arcadia Prime, the galaxy felt a little smaller, a little safer, and a little brighter than it had the day the war ended. The adventure was over, but the legacy had just begun.